Hey everybody, it's Tommy Canale and welcome back to Before the Lights podcast, the show that tells you how they made their mark. He was ranked in the top 5 in the world as a junior golfer. He attended USC and has been named the best in-state teacher by Golf Digest multiple times. He's the founder of the JRL Golf Academy and the co-founder of the California Junior Golf Tour. Let's welcome in John Leary. John, my man, how are you, brother?
What's going on, Big Tommy? How you doing, pal?
I am well. In a little bit, we're going to be joined later by your son, Grant, who's currently in high school, people. He's a 2026 graduate, better known as G Money, but G Money will join us in just a little bit. John, to start with you, you're born in the Philippines. You grew up in Culver City. At 10 years old, you go to visit your uncle in Florida. And how does that introduce you to golf?
That's some pretty good digging there that you even got to that point. So I'm pretty impressed that you got there. My uncle, his name was Obi Leary, rest his soul. He's no longer with us, but I went to go visit my uncle for the first time in Florida, and he was a huge golf nut. So much so he lived up in New York, but he had a vacation home in Florida on a golf course. To this point, I know nothing about golf whatsoever. But I was playing all different sports. I was playing football, baseball, basketball, anything you could think of, I played. And we went to Florida. I was 10. And when we got to Florida, we were going there as a family vacation, right? And we were going to go to Disney World. So all I know as a 10-year-old is when I go to Florida, that everything in Florida is Disney World. Like from the airport to like anywhere you're at is Disney World.
The entire state is Disney World.
My uncle picks us up from the airport and goes, I'm taking you golfing tomorrow. Or he goes, I'm going to take you to a driving range. So I'm thinking, okay, well, we're in Florida. We're Disney World. We're going to drive something, right? So we get to the driving range the next day, and it's a driving range as we know it as golfers. But keep in mind, I know nothing about golf, right? We're at Disney World for all I know. And we end up in this range in the middle of Florida. And it's the middle of summer. It's hot. Mosquitoes are biting me. I don't even know what these things are. They're big enough to carry me off. And there's nobody on this driving range except one person hitting balls, right? And that guy left some golf balls in his tray, whatever. And I didn't know what this was. And my uncle starts with my dad and goes, he's going to teach my dad how to golf. And I'm just sitting under the tree because I'm like, what are we going to drive? We're not driving any cars. This is silly. So I'm honestly pouting sort of under the tree, just sort of like, this is stupid. What ends up happening is, I'm there for half an hour or so, and my dad can't hit the ball at all. And I'm like, whatever. That guy that left those golf balls, I went over there and I kind of saw what my dad was doing with my uncle. So I grabbed my uncle's driver and I put it on the little rubber tee that I saw the guy was putting him on. And I went up and I just started hitting him. And the first shot I hit it, no problem. Second shot I hit, my uncle now turns around and goes, is that you hitting it? And I turn around, I look, I go, there's nobody else here. I was like, yeah. So I'm hitting it like 125 yards every time. Not even like, I have no clue what I'm doing. And he says, you're going to play golf. And I was like, yeah, whatever. So anyways, we concluded we were there for a couple weeks. We did the whole thing. Disney World was great, this and that. Come back. And about 6 months later, my dad picks me up from football practice and goes, hey, I signed up for this golf lesson over at Rancho Park. You want to take the lesson? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? And so didn't even know what I was doing. My uncle had bought me a set of clubs on the way home. Right. And I got this little junior set that I still have to this day, Tommy.
Really?
It's in my garage. I have the bag. I put it up. Somebody asked me the other day, they go, hey, do you got a bunch of set of clubs and this, that? What are your favorites? I go, honestly, I really don't. I go, I don't really care much about clubs. I go, but I care about that one set. Mm-hmm. That's all I care about. Right. So anyways, I go and get to the lesson. I hit balls. The guy's name, he's no longer with us anymore because I'm getting old and he was really old then. His name's Ed Coleman. He taught at Rancho Park for forever. So after the lesson, a little half-hour lesson, Ed goes, how many years have you been playing, kid? And I go, the second time I've ever hit golf balls, Mr. Coleman. He goes, well, you probably should keep playing. And 6 months after that, my dad signed me up for a golf tournament at Alhambra Golf Course in the city of Alhambra out here in Southern California. And I won that tournament. And and I won my first 2 junior tournaments. And after that, I was off to the races. I thought it was great to be able to have the final shot. You know what I mean? Like, you know, in basketball, you always wanted the final shot with the game on the line, or in baseball, you wanted to have the final at bat. And in golf, you have that every single time, which is, I think, something that I've always cherished. And that's what I really latched onto.
You also had an instructor by the name of Eddie Merrins, who was at UCLA and a head coach. But I want to go a step further and talk about your short game coach and Dennis Sheehy that also helped Seve Ballesteros. So tell me about working with Dennis.
I'm surprised you know Dennis. Not many people know Dennis. Dennis is a phenomenal coach. He's still down in San Diego. He still coaches. And Dennis was one of the early, let's just say, one of the early disciples of like David Ledbetter. You know what I mean? When Led was first coming on the scene and he was working with Faldo and stuff like that. He was kind of in that first group that really worked with Led and stuff like that. And he was able to hang around and work with Seve. He worked with Ian Woosnam. A lot of the Euros he worked with. So he showed me a lot of cool little shots around the greens. Actually, it's funny you say that. Grant today, when we were practicing, I was showing him some of these shots around the green, how to soften a shot with the knees and the elbows, and all that stuff I learned from Dennis, who I'm sure learned it from Seve and stuff like that. So it was just passed on. You met
Chichi Rodriguez. He takes you underneath your wing. You caddied for him for a few years. But I want to know, what's the biggest thing that you've taken from Chichi that you've now passed on to Grant?
That there's a price to pay for everything. And it's not necessarily financially always. The price to pay were things that when I look back on my career, I'm like, yeah, I paid that price. And there was more prices to pay. And that a lot of that, what I consider that the price to pay is the time you put into the game to sharpen your game, and to gain the skills in the game to compete at the highest level. Those are the things I'm talking about, being away from family to compete in tournaments, and, putting practice before anything else. Those are the prices that you got to pay. And I think every great player, they look back on their career, or they're even people playing now, they realize the price they're paying.
Your first tour event was at age 16 in 1996. And this is a short world, because you played with Brett Quigley, who's also been on my show. So I thought it was pretty cool that I've had Brett on my show a few years back, and now I find out that you played with Brett in your first tour event. So tell me about this.
I posted a picture. I think you might have seen it. I posted a picture recently when I played. Yeah. And Brett was in the picture in the background. I played with Brett Quigley and Sonny Skinner. You couldn't have had two nicer people dealing with a 16-year-old that was way over his head and was just like trying to survive. And they couldn't have been more supportive. Even the time that it was on 10, 11, 12, whatever the par 5 is, 13, I think, on the back nine. We teed off on the back nine. I want to say it was 13, the par 5. They were already up on the green. I hit an approach in, and I walked up the hill. It's a big steep hill, and I walked on the green, and I didn't realize that they already had their mark down on the green. And I was like stepping all over Sonny Skinner's line. And at this time, we're wearing cleats. We're wearing metal, right? And I was devastated, right? And he's like, no. He's like yelling at me. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And those two guys could not have been nicer and more supportive of me. To this day, I still remember how nice they were. And, I haven't had any contact with them ever, after those years, but, I always look out for Brett Quigley. I see he's doing, he did pretty well on the Champions Tour. Yeah. He was a heck of a player then, and he still is today.
Yeah. You played Riviera in college.
Yeah.
You played it on tour.
Yeah.
And you just played it with your son.
Yes.
So now what I want you to do is rate them 1, 2, and 3 of importance to you. Like, what is
one was my son.
Okay. Then
no two ways about it.
What's 2?
Yeah. 1 was my son. I stopped on the 6th hole, Tommy, and I literally stopped. I was almost in tears, and I called Grant. We were walking up to the green, and we're about halfway there, and I stopped, and I said, Grant, come here real quick. And I gave him a hug. I go, I just want you to know that this means the world to me. I go, this is like my greatest golf experience ever. So, yeah, that's a number one, way far ahead of everything else. Way far ahead.
Love it. Is the tour 2 or is college number 2?
The tour.
The tour?
The tour would be 2, yeah, and the college would be 3. Yeah, this is special to me. It's had a lot of meaning to me over the years. Like you said, all those things that you just named right there are reasons why they're so special to me. And growing up as a kid in LA, you know, it's like, that's our major. You know, if you're from SoCal, that's your major.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list just to see. I've never been to Riv yet. I want to get there.
We got to make that happen, Tommy.
So tell me this then. Tell me about Billy Andrade coming up to you and giving you a valet ticket and thinking that you're a worker instead of an actual pro.
Tommy, you
I did some research, John.
Tommy, you're pretty good, buddy. You're pretty good. I'm going to tell you right now. Okay. So it's the first year that I Mondayed into Riviera. And you know, I shot my 83 or something like that my first round. The second round I came back, I think I shot 67 or something like that. So I'm feeling pretty good about, you know, whatever. You know, but I clear out my locker and I'm waiting in the valet area and I've got a black Adidas jacket on, right? And it's a brand new one they gave me for the week, you know, like they gear you out pretty good when you play on tour. So I'm standing there waiting and Billy Andrade comes up to me and goes, "Yeah, can you get my courtesy card?" He hands me his ticket. And I look at him and I just kind of smiled and I go, "Mr. Andre, I'm actually a player." And he turned red immediately. To Billy's credit, he had a $20 bill with the valet. So Billy's a good tipper, you know what I mean, for valet. But I don't know if he was tipping 20 because we both missed the cut that week. So. That's pretty good, Tommy, that you got that. Other stuff that happened that week that I hope you didn't find out about, but yeah.
Is this one of them where you were thought of as an amateur and told them that you had to hit striped balls and you were supposed to be hitting?
Who did you talk to?
Same tournament, wasn't it?
That was a sick tournament.
You can't get any respect as a pro.
The Monday qualifier turned into a Tuesday qualifier because we got rained out on the Monday.
Okay.
So I qualified Tuesday. It's late. We can't even get a practice round. I shot 65. I shot 9 under on the south course of Los Serranos. And I tried to get out of there early enough because I was pretty far ahead. And they was like, "Hey, it looks like you're going to get in, run over to the course." Well, anyways, it didn't happen. They go, "Here's the deal. You got to tee off on Wednesday morning. But you have to be off the course by 6:30 a.m. because that's when the Pro-Am starts and Tiger Woods tees off first." So we got there at like 5:30 in the morning. If I could just play a couple of holes to get a feel of the speed of the greens or anything, right? Mm-hmm. So we're there at like 5:30 in the morning. They got the lights and generators on and my caddy goes and puts the bag down over on the range and I go over and I get range balls and the guy stops me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Getting range balls." He's like, "Well, are you a player?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a player." So he goes, "Well, the amateur, you get the striped golf balls." And I go, "I'm not an amateur, sir." I go, "That's my golf bag over there with my name on it with the guy standing next to it." Right. He's like, looks at me like he wasn't believing it. Right. I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. So anyways, I got the golf balls anyways and went and hit my golf balls and did my 2-hole practice round.
You had back injuries that basically shortened your career. When did it first happen or start happening to you?
I'd had it since I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
I'd had it since I was probably about 14, 15 years old. It's why I'm so sensitive when I see kids. I work with a lot of juniors, as you know, and when I see certain things in their swings that especially what I see on social media with some teachers, what they're posting on there and their kids. And I'm like, you'll see it even with my kid. I'm very sensitive about the body and what you're putting it through because, in the long run, so that stuff won't last if it's not right.
What was the extent of your back injury that halted it?
L4, L5. I would just get what ended up happening was I would get spasms, much like I was able to play with Fred Couples, and he's kind of the same ish. I had the same when he described his stuff. It was the same exact as mine. I would go 2-3 weeks where I would just spasm out, and I just couldn't really do much. And then all of a sudden I had to go play again, and you just can't do that against these guys. You know what I mean? It's just if you're not sharp and healthy and all that, it wore on me. I did it for 10 years. In terms of professional, but it was that's what did it in on the back.
So you're basically saying you're teaching today to avoid what you went through yesterday.
Learn from my mistakes.
Right.
Teachers, most of the teachers, they've just made a lot of mistakes. Just learn from us.
Outside of golf, I mean, the only other thing you did is you were a deckhand on a sport fishing boat and you had a bait business. So how does this all start?
From my bad back. I don't know why you know this, but that's pretty funny. Yeah, I did start a bait business up at Castaic Lake. And we did that for about I did that for about a year because I was just in transition in terms of like, I had a mortgage that kept coming every month, and I wasn't able to play. So, I kind of connected a couple of dots and made a connection and started a pretty successful bait business up at Castaic Lake.
John, tell me this then. If you had to pick one person, who was influential in getting your teaching career started?
Oh, man. Mauro Gonzalez. He was a guy that taught down on the range down there at Angeles National where I started. And he's a Colombian. He's actually Grant's godfather.
Okay.
He's back in Colombia now, but he was the one that, he saw, I used to practice there as a player first, and he took interest in me and he knew kind of the pain that I was going through with my back, this and that. And then he'd always say, Juanito, whenever you need to work, you could come start teaching down here with me. And that's really how it started, and I still played my first couple years that I was teaching. But, it's funny. I played well, and I was talking to an older teacher by the name of Don Brown. That's a friend of mine, and he goes, yeah, you'll probably play well your first couple of years because he goes, you'll just take pressure off yourself a little bit, because you're playing, but you're like you're teaching, so you're not as hard on yourself. And sure enough, I did. I played okay the couple of years. Made me think about trying to chase it again. I was like, bad. I think I had one event where the back went out and just reminded me like, no, you're not doing this again. So yeah.
The mental side of the game. I mean, listeners, I don't know if I've mentioned this in the 4+ years I've been doing this show, but I help high school kids get in touch with college coaches and get scholarships. And golf is one of my main sports that I take care of. But the mental side of the game to me is not practiced enough. You agree?
Agree. Wholeheartedly. A lot of times it's just, they might not be getting good information from somebody that's either done it or that somebody has a system or somebody that's just really well studied in that facet. I think there's a lot of people, I rely a lot on Rick Sessinghouse. He works with a lot of players that I work with and, helps kind of complete the team with flow code, him and Josh Alpert. I think they're great with what they do. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that that mental stuff, it's hard because, Tommy, as you know, it's hard to quantify it, right? Because you can't see it, right? You can't see it. But the only way we kind of sometimes see it is like, is there a correlation with some scores every now and again, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to quantify, right? Like you can quantify if like somebody's putting better or hitting it better, but because you can see it, but you can't see the mental stuff always.
You're teaching from tour players to juniors to your own son. And I just want to say to everybody listening to this show that I'm impressed with how you handle Grant. I'm impressed with how you do things on social media and you don't sugarcoat things. So I'm impressed that you show the good and the bad and the ugly. And there's a lot of parents that don't do that. I see it every day. So kudos to you.
I appreciate that, Tommy. We live, I know it's funny. We live the golf life, you know what I mean? And it's just, that's what golf is. There's ups and downs. And, I'm not going to, especially when it comes to my son with when it comes to social media stuff, it's like, no, this is real. We don't just want to put highlights, like, I don't know. And I think, honestly, I'm not a huge social media person in terms of like, like I've got hundreds of thousands of followers or whatever, but I just like to put real stuff out there. You know what I mean? But with the mindset of like, I want my students as well to know like, hey, dude, that's not easy. Like, it's like I sympathize with you as well, man.
Right.
and the parents as well. Like, hey, look, like these are the talks that we have with our kids. And sometimes, I just like to put it out there just so that other parents can like, hey, it's all right. Everything's going to be all right. Have a relationship first with your kids. That's first and foremost, right? Have a good relation with your kid, and then whatever else happens after that.
Grant, we're going to bring you in. You started at age 9. Right. Tell me, what started your love of the game? I mean, I know you have interest in the game, but what started the actual love for the game?
See, that would go back to the good old days at Angeles. And I remember one summer my dad was just like, hey, do you want to come out, help me at the course? He was like, I'll go buy you lunch. You can hit range balls. And I get the whole package, right? And so it really started, I was just going out there, helping him bring out all of his, all the furniture that he would have for his golf academy back in the day. And then, I was like, oh, well, I have like 9 hours to kill. I was like, might as well go hit some range balls, right? And then that's kind of when I was like, oh, you know what? I'm pretty decent at this. And so that's where my love started. Started from there.
This is a question I like to ask juniors because it kind of shows how far you've gone. But what was your first tournament score you ever played in?
Ooh, well, funny part.
John's already laughing. This must be good.
Leading up to my first tournament, I had never played 18 holes.
What?
There's a fun fact, Tommy. Yeah.
So the first time you played 18 holes was in a tournament?
It was in a 36-hole tournament.
Yeah.
2-dayer, yeah.
At Los Robles and Calabasas Country Club, which is not the easiest course in the world for a beginner.
Yeah, and I had never played any of those courses before. So first day fired a nice solid 118 with my grandpa on the bag. And then second day was a thriller. That was a 128 at Calabasas Country Club. Yeah. There was a lot of tears that went into it, but I still look back on it, and I might still have the CJG tour record for the highest score.
So, John, I got to go back to you. What was the idea of putting him in a 36-hole tournament that he's never played 36 holes?
Okay, so this wasn't all my idea. Okay, I'm going to put it with that. Dan Martin, my partner, was also part of this decision. We said, hey, I wonder what happens if we just start a kid and like they just really just play competitively, like from the beginning. And it was sort of a science project, honestly. No joke. I was like, Dan, it's all right. Let's just use my kid. Let's see what happens. So it was just a science project, honestly.
Grant, you started your golf career as a science project.
Yeah. I mean, never leave it to a couple of golf pros that like we're going to experiment whenever we can.
Yeah.
I seen that you made the President's Honor Roll at Crespi Carmelita High School with a 4.0 GPA. I applaud you for that because academics are first and foremost before any athletics. So my question to you is, how much is academics stressed at home between mom and dad?
Academics is everything. Academics come before golf. So if you don't take care of the grades, then you can't play golf. And I remember probably in 4th grade, they made me sign a contract. It was my first contract ever, which stated if I had, I probably failed my last spelling test or something. And they were like, if Grant Leary fails another test, all sports and fun will be confiscated from him. And I had to sign that contract in like 4th grade. And that's how the academic, how do I say it?
So that worked.
Yeah, exactly. The work ethic started.
Yeah. His credit, he's never, I see nothing comes easy to him. I'll tell you that right now, Tommy. Like school doesn't come easy to him. He just outworks, like he just doesn't. the best way I can describe him, he's the best trier I know. And I'm not just saying that because he's my kid. If he was one of my students, I would say the same thing, but he's really the best trier that I know. He just doesn't give up. So, that's the greatest asset I think that he truly has.
Grant, how much golf is talked about in your household?
Man, it's honestly, it's kind of always on the clock, honestly. I mean, just like, even like when we're having breakfast and stuff, my dad will just be like, hey, come check out this video. I mean, I think we had some really good swing changes made last night at the range, right? And so it'll just always be, maybe even talks in the car, just kind of all throughout the day,
Do you seek out advice for him, or do you wait for his feedback on what you guys worked on?
I think it's a collaborative effort. I'd say, obviously he has the videos on his platform, and I'll ask him to send it to me, and then I'll ask him, hey Dad, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think I could improve on? What asset needs more practice? And it's really a team effort,
Tommy, I'm probably now with him at this phase. I'm letting him explore and figure out some more things on his own too, like with what he knows. And, as a youngster, we didn't, like, when I was growing up playing, I never saw my swing on video or anything like that,
right.
And it was, I hit a draw, imagining that I was swinging like Chichi Rodriguez, and I hit a fade thinking I was Lee Trevino. Right. And it didn't look anything like it probably. Right. But it made the ball curve. So, some of these things, like, I realized that we can't tell him, like, he knows enough, right, if he's paying attention, he should be able to figure out stuff on his own, which I think is important, right? The self-discovery is super important in the game.
I want to get an answer from both of you, but I want to start with Grant. I want to go backwards. You just won a tournament here. I think it was last weekend. You were the CJG Player of the Year, but I want to go back before that. When you had your first 2-day win that happened on the CJG and your dad interviews you, what was that to you, Grant?
That was the coolest interview I think I've done, beside for this one. But it was just like, I don't know if you've been looking at our Instagram, but when we travel to tournaments and stuff, we'll do, like, what is it? Just like a vlog of the of how the tournament's going and what goes into a tournament for us. But it was just like one of those talks, It was just like just happened that the camera was rolling, but it was just a conversation between me and my dad.
How was it for you, John, interviewing him after that first 2-day win?
It was it felt good. He'd been trending and stuff like that, and it just felt, I was just happy for him. You know what I mean? It wasn't anything for me, because in terms of like, oh yeah, like he quantified what we were doing. No, it was just like the kid finally got a bone, right? Like the game's always kicking you, and it's always trying to beat you down, it seems like. And it's just nice that, he got a bone finally for himself, and just to prove to himself, like, okay, cool, you can start doing this, right? And I think the momentum, carried through 4 events, and he won another event yesterday. So I think it was just a good little momentum deal for him. And, I was just really, really happy for him more than anything.
Grant, tell me this, because I'm anxious to see what you say here, but what did the year 2023 teach you as a golfer?
That I really do have the skill and potential to transcend to the next level. I mean, we did some stuff at the beginning of the year, made goals, plans, and I think the most important part was we changed up the practice plan, making sure that we're paying more attention to what we're doing and putting more attention to what our intention is when we're practicing, right? And that really that helped my game a lot, and the scores kind of backed it up.
So what are you working on for 2024, and what are your goals for this year?
This year, this is a really big year for college recruiting, obviously. So we're going to be playing. I know I have an amateur event tomorrow on the boat tour.
Nice.
And so we're going to be playing a lot bigger tournaments. Probably going to be a lot more traveling, huh?
Yeah. Definitely more
so we're
traveling.
going to do a lot more traveling. And I mean, we're just going to keep hoping to do what the end of 2023 brought and just keep progressing upwards. You know, it's not about perfection. It's about progression.
John, tell my listeners, what are in golf 2 breakfast days?
2 breakfast days.
Yeah, when you get to have 2 breakfasts.
So in golf, you do not want to. You don't if you after your first round of in a tournament and it's a multi-day event. If you come back the next day and you didn't play very well the first day, you get that early tee time the next day. And sometimes when you really play poorly and you're that first group out, well, you got to have breakfast before you tee off. And typically nobody's in front of you. You can play fast enough that you probably get breakfast when you get done as well. So you don't want to have 2 breakfast days. Those are bad. I learned that from Chi-Chi. That's who Odyssey told me about. He's like, you know, when you play bad, you get breakfast twice.
John, from what I understand in research, that the Hooters tour had humbled you quite a bit. But,
sure did.
But how did you take that of how it humbled you to prepare Grant for setbacks that you know are going to happen in this sport?
I think he's well aware of them. You know, you probably play. Craig Stadler always told me, he goes, you make 90% of your money in 10% of your weeks. That means there's 90% of your weeks that suck. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's the reality of it. And you know. I let Grant know at the highest level that's kind of the norm. Like you're going to kind of be in Suckville a lot of times, you know? But you just got to know that you're good enough. That's the thing. That's the hard part of the game, Tommy, is that you got to know that you're always good enough and it's just around the corner, and you got to truly believe in that. Right. Because once you do get the momentum going and stuff like that, the game gets real easy. It really does, Tommy. It's just most of the time we're trying too hard, right? You know, you watch those guys on tour, every one of them can win every week, but you know, there's only so few that do on a consistent basis. I mean, Scotty Scheffler, number 1 player in the world, he won 4 times last year only, right? I say only, but I mean, the guy, that's the best player in the world, but you know, everybody else, you watch them and you're like, God, these guys are world beater. How are they not winning every week? Right. So, you just got to kind of be prepared for that. But also how I remind him that the training, what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it as well. So, you know, if you're trying to take shortcuts, the only thing shortcuts gets you is it cuts you short. So we're trying to stay away from that.
We've talked throughout this interview about the California Junior Golf Tour. Listeners, I've gone there. I've done seminars for them. I've scouted. I've helped many players from this tour, but it started with you and Dan Martin, who's with the PGA. I understand, did this concept really start from you two with your academies battling each other and decide to start the tour?
I don't know if we were battling. We were just in the same space. Right?
Okay.
And, he had a big academy. I had a big academy. We'd never even met. And it's funny because the golf course that I was at before, we were just like-minded people. Right. Our hearts with junior golfers and developing players. And that's where really it came from. And it came to the point, I can't remember if he called me or I called him. I was like, hey man, let's just have dinner and let's go just talk. And we ate at this pho restaurant off Devonshire out here in the Valley. And like literally it was like a blind date. Right. And we were just talking, rapping this and that. And you know, kind of one thing led to another. And we're like, let's have a junior tour, man. You know, and it was really at first, it was like so that our juniors can play in a competitive environment. And then next thing you know, people obviously they wanted to play and this and that. We're like, come on, bring it all. So that's how it all started, truly.
Grant, last question for you is,
all right,
what is like one thing that you're learning from on-course development that you've learned recently?
Course management. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway I've had in these last few months that I've been progressing. Just like kind of knowing how to play the golf course, right? How it's set up to play, and knowing where to miss it and where not to miss it is a definite factor which can either make or break your round.
John, last question for you then is, how difficult is it for you to go and watch and walk and not be able to help or do anything?
It's miserable, Tommy. Absolutely miserable. And it's, I get now what my parents were going through, right? My dad watched pretty much every round I played, right? And there's a lot of people that, I saw one of my old college teammates yesterday at our tour event. Charlie Hoffman is a buddy. And to this day, Charlie's always like, he's always asking how my dad is, but he always says, he goes, man, did he walk every step with you as a junior? And that's the one thing, like with my own kid, is that I just wanted him to know that I'm always there. Right. I was always there, good or bad, however you played. Right. I saw the really bad rounds and I saw the really good rounds. So just staying consistent with that is important to me. And I think maybe one day when he has a kid, he'll realize how hard it is, because I didn't realize how hard it was on my dad.
Grant, I want to say much success to you. I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors, in your college journey and going forward. Whatever it is, I'm behind you. I love what you're doing, and I can't wait to see where you end up.
Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate it very much.
You are welcome. And John, my man, I always appreciate you and your hospitality of you and Dan on the tour, but more importantly, I'm glad you came on the show. And as soon as we get done, I'll tell you where I found out all this information about you.
I can only think of a couple people. But Tommy, I do want to say, I think you're doing a great service for these junior golfers with trying to go through the college process. I think it's phenomenal what you've done for them. I know that the parents come to us a lot of times, and we just honestly, hey, call Tommy. You give great information, great insight. There's no fluff that you're selling. It's just, you're good enough or you're not good enough, or here, these are potentially the ways you want to go through and navigate the college system. You've got my full support there, and we thank you very much for coming out on the tour and doing what you do.
I appreciate that so much. Listeners, before we go, don't forget to join the exclusive Before the Lights members group. Click the link in the show notes. It includes private video calls with former guests, a one-of-a-kind collector's poker chip, extra content, and more. It costs you a lot of money, only $7.99 a month, and it's your way to support the show. That's going to do it for this episode of Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale, and until next time, everybody, I salute a chin chin.